Welcome to our first Fresh Pass wine event. Very exciting. Just so you know a little bit about me, I am a master of wine. Means I did a lot of studying to learn a lot about wine. I can tell you it was a ton of fun. And I also have the privilege of being the head wine buyer for Albertsons companies. So they've enlisted my help today to host this great Fresh Pass wine event. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about summer wines, and we're going to talk about the different things that make summer wine special, and we're going to talk about some food pairing, we're going to talk about some winemaking, and then we're also going to taste some wines, of course, because this wouldn't be fun unless you got to taste some wines. What I encourage you to do is if you have the wines in front of you, please go ahead and start opening them, enjoying them. I'm going to talk about them in a little bit, but you can this is going to be much more interesting if you're drinking while I give the presentation, right? So anyway, but first, the first thing that I need to do is to talk about where we are. We actually have the privilege of being at MUMM as well. And MUMM as well is a very famous winery in the Livermore Valley. It was established in the 1800s, and the Wente family in the 1940s purchased the land. And then in 1990, Phil Wente partnered with Sergio Traverso to create the winery. So it's been around since 1990, and Robbie Meyer is their acclaimed winemaker. And if you've ever had the chance to taste the wines from MUMM as well, they're beautiful wines, and they've garnered a lot of scores in the press. So MUMM as well is connected to the Wente family, and we partner a lot with the Wente family, so it's great to be here. A beautiful location. If you ever have the chance to come to the Livermore Valley, this should be top on your list of places to stop. All right, so now that I've told you where we are, as you can see, we're going to talk about summer wines. And so we picked the topic summer wines because it's going to get very warm this summer, or it may already be warm where you are. It's nice and warm here. And so we want to give people the idea, why would you, what would you do to have a backyard barbecue or an event, to meet your needs during the summer? So unless you happen to live in Alaska or in high elevation, which maybe some of you do, it's great to have a wine that has a little bit lower alcohol and a little bit higher acidity to go with a very warm temperature. So that's really what kind of, we're thinking about today. Those lighter style white wines, lighter style red wines, sparkling wine is always a great wine to work with your summer. And then also some red wines like Pinot Noir, which don't have a lot of tannins, so not a lot of bite, not a lot of weight, a little bit lower alcohol, closer to 13.5% instead of 15%. Those are great wines to go with summer. And so that's generally what I'm thinking of, and that's why we picked the wines that we're tasting today. They can also be enjoyed in the cool weather too. It's not like people don't drink sparkling wine during the winter, but they make a kind of a perfect combination with that warm weather. As we think about where do these summer wines come from, it's almost an interesting kind of juxtaposition. These summer wines come from the coolest areas. So a lot of these areas are cool climate because that cool climate creates the acidity in the grapes. And it also means that not as much alcohol, essentially sugar gets created in the grapes that turn into alcohol. So generally you get your cool climate or your summer wines from like places like, some of the wines we have are central coast of California where you get a lot of coastal influence, or, parts of France where it's not necessarily super warm and you get these nice fresh rosés, or even, New Zealand, which is, gets a lot of sun, but it is quite cold. If you've ever been there during the summer, you know what I mean. The winds blow very hard, and it keeps the wines nice and refreshing. And so those are the types of wines, interestingly enough, that match with the summer, as I said. And a lot of the wines that we're tasting today, you have wines like Chardonnay, which have these lemon and green apple flavors. You have Sauvignon Blanc, which has a floral kind of grapefruit lime. Rosé, which is that cherry watermelon, Pinot Noir, strawberry, cherry plum. Those type of descriptors in the wine make you just think of summer, right? They've got that freshness to them, and they make your mouth water. So kind of similar to the fruits you would eat, are also the wines you drink. We have a couple of, ways that I have a couple of ways I taste wines, and some of them are rather complicated, so I'm not going to talk about them at this Fresh Pass seminar. But here I've given you an example of kind of two things that I look at from a white wine and a red wine wheel perspective. So when we're tasting wines, you can think of what is happening within your taste. And why wines taste the way they do. So your white wine wheel, you have those things that I was talking about, the lemon, the grapefruit, or those flavors that come from the grapes. You also have aromatic characteristics that come out of the wine from winemaking. So you have, things like buttery or oaky, which are influenced by the way the wine is made. And then you have aging aromas, which are the tertiary aromas. So as the wine ages in the barrel, in the tank, it develops those third aroma characteristics. And so those were some of the other, the almonds, the bruised apple, waxy character. Now, a lot of that maybe is not particularly relevant to summer wines. You want those kind of fresh, younger wines usually for this, warm weather. But there are some wines that, I can think of during the summer would be great, even though they have a little bit of that aging characteristic. And that's on the white wine side. The red wine side, again, you're sitting more on the top of the wheel in this case, which is like pomegranate, cherries, dark cherry, raspberry, plum, maybe even I'd throw watermelon in here, but maybe watermelon. And then if you think about like vineyard characteristics, you have some characteristics from the oak, again, the bacon spice, chocolate, all those things. And then you have things that age, as the wine ages and develops some extra characters too. So hopefully that gives you an idea what I'm talking about when we're going to taste through some of these wines. So what is he talking about? These are the things that I'm referring back to on these white wine and red wine wheels. And on a lot of the virtual tastings I do, I provide these wheels. If you're clever enough, you can take a screenshot. We also, have some of these materials available. And they're great ways to kind of give you a lexicon of wine tasting. So as you become a better wine taster and you get these terms, it's easier to understand what you're tasting and why you're tasting. So, a couple things about summer food and wine pairing tips. Again, as I mentioned, you're looking for these fresh wines with acidity. So we have a number of different things here on the table that we're going to taste through with the wines. Obviously, fruit is great. We have some, salami, we have some cheese, and I'll talk about each specific one. We have a lot of great things here from our Primo Taglio line at Albertsons Safeway. We have a great set of kind of, things that we exclusively sell. And then we have some really nice Open Nature crackers. I love those pita chips, so like my favorite. And they go great with especially like a lighter white wine. And so we'll talk about those and how they fit into this whole process. So a couple of things just before we get going, to kind of remind you about Fresh Pass. It's great that you belong to Fresh Pass. Obviously you're here because you're part of Fresh Pass. So, we have a lot of great features to Fresh Pass. Rewards don't expire. Delivery is free over $30. If your order's over $30, you can buy as much wine as you want and get that discount. We have kind of a VIP phone line, all sorts of great stuff. So, we hope you continue to kind of think of all those membership benefits. I was reading through this list and there's so many of them. I didn't even realize some of them exist. So that's great too, because I'm gonna go take advantage of them when I get back home. So anyway, just want to remind you of that before you get too far into the wine tasting and then you forget everything that I've said. All right, so on to the wines. So we're gonna taste some wines. The first thing we're gonna start with is sparkling wine, and that's because it's fun. Actually, well, it makes most sense to start with it, but it's also fun. And so the first wine that we have is the MUMM NAPA, and this is the BRUT Prestige. And so I love MUMM. It's one of my favorite sparkling wines from the United States because it's made in the traditional style. So it's made in a style where the wine itself is, the first wine is made, the Bon Clair as they call it, and then the secondary fermentation takes place in the bottle. So it's made in that traditional method, and that creates that leesy, yeasty characteristic. And one of the things about sparkling wine is that there are two reasons why it's a great summer wine. First is because it sparkles, and everything that sparkles is fun. And then the second is because the acidity on sparkling wine is very high, and that has a relationship to do with picking the grapes early. So the Bon Clair is very acidic, and then also the fact that there's CO2 in the wine, which also increases the acidity, decreases the pH. And you know, sparkling wine itself is a great before dinner wine, but it also can work well with like lighter fares like fish or whatnot. If you go to champagne, they say it goes with everything. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I guess if you're into champagne, you just drink champagne all the time anyway. So eventually it just tastes like everything. So anyway, you know, on the plate here, really the best combination that we have is that brie cheese. And so brie, when you have a sparkling wine like this, which we'll taste. And sorry, I'm spitting, otherwise this will devolve for me. But you don't need to spit at home. You can enjoy yourself. But it, you know, it kind of takes that punchy, you know, yeasty characteristic and it smooths it out. So brie is a great combination with sparkling wine, and really, you know, kind of where it's sourced from in France, is very close to champagne itself. So, but also anything with fat in it. So this salumi, I mean the Toscana salami, it's a good combination. And then, you know, there's actually some Parmesan crisp. So one of the things that's an interesting combination with champagne is something that's salty. So Parmesan crisps, you know, popcorn, potato chips, all that stuff works. So, you know, really nice. And what I'd say is that the one thing you have to do is you have to make sure you've got a halfway decent nice bottle of sparkling for that to work. Some of the more expensive ones maybe have more limited food pairing options. So again, really pretty wine. Super enjoyable. And, you know, one of the things about MUMM itself is it's MUMM NAPA. And so this has to come from the Napa Valley, or at least from Napa County. And you can really see how it shows. The finish is really elegant. And, you know, obviously the price varies across the country, but pretty darn reasonable for what it is, you know, to get traditional method sparkling wine that takes like, you know, 3 years to make to taste like this. All right, very enjoyable wine. So we're going to go from sparkling wine in Napa to almost as far away as you can get to New Zealand with this Oyster Bay. And Oyster Bay is a you know, is a producer in Blenheim, which is in Marlborough. And here, you guys gotta see the bottle here. So this is the Oyster Bay bottle. This is, again, a great summer wine for a couple of different reasons. First of all, as I mentioned, New Zealand's very cold. Even though, you know, it gets a lot of sunlight, the average temperature is very, very chilly, especially in Blenheim and Marlborough, where this is made. And so you get these wines with a tremendous amount of acidity and brightness to them. And not only is that, you know, you have that characteristic, and out of this wine, you know, you can almost just smell it on the nose. Like jumps out of the glass with these tropical and lemon, lime, and grapefruit and tomato leaf characteristics. But not only that, the wine is additionally made in a style that means that it's, you know, refreshing, and in that sense that they're really going for what we call reductive winemaking. So they are not looking to introduce oak or oxidation or anything that would change the characteristics of the wine. They want to keep it as fresh and bright as possible. And so there's not only is there no you know, oak used, there's also no secondary fermentation, which is a malolactic fermentation, which reduces the acidity in the wine and kind of gives the wine that buttery taste. So they inhibit malolactic fermentation. And so that creates this wine that's super fresh and super fruity. And, you know, mouth-watering, right? It's just, it's perfect. I mean, it's kind of, it's a little bit to me like beer, you know. You can never replace beer on a really hot day, but if I had to drink something other than like a light beer, this would be it. Because it just makes your mouth water, makes you want to go back for more. And this is a particularly good example of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. Sometimes they cross into the, oh, we're very aromatic and we have this style that's in your face. And sometimes you have this kind of really, you know, reduced style where the wine's not very fruity or floral, and this is right in between. It's not so overt that it punches you in the face, but it's also bright and you know, enough to really give the idea of the freshness And then again, the finish is really well done. You know, it just kind of slides off the palate. And you know, this one is a little bit harder to pair because of the fact that it has that kind of, you know, aggressive floral characteristic. But you know, there are some options on the table. Some of the peppers, you know, the manchego cheese would go with it, and some of the other fruits. Actually, it's a good wine to eat with some fruit, you know, and enjoy kind of a little bit of light fare with it. I would also say that, you know, if you were really looking at enjoying this wine too, it is a perfect combination with oysters. So if you have the opportunity to go buy some oysters or some sort of other shellfish, really great wine for that. And then of course in the summer, that's a perfect combination for everything. Go to the beach, drink some Oyster Bay, and enjoy yourself. All right, so that was a fun wine. Okay, so the next wine we're going to taste is the WENTE Riva Ranch. And so the WENTE Riva Ranch, which is this wine here, is my example of a good, nice summer Chardonnay. So sometimes you get these Chardonnays that are heavy, oaky, buttery, and that's a style, and some of those wines are very beautiful, but they don't always necessarily work out to be the best summer wines because a lot of oak and weight and heftiness and 16% alcohol, or whatever, it's probably not 16, but 15% alcohol, let's say, and summer don't necessarily mix. So this is really a great example of a wine that fits in that characteristic of little bit more the lean, you know, elegant style of Chardonnay. There's still 100% malolactic fermentation. So this wine still does have a touch of the butteriness, but it's very well managed. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that this winery, that WENTE, and the Riva Ranch vineyard is very close to the coast. It's in the ARROYO SECO appellation, which is in Monterey. And if anyone's familiar with the way Monterey works, is as you kind of go inland down, you know, that area, San Lucia Highlands, and to Arroyo Seco, it gets warmer, but honestly, it's still not very warm, right? So you still have these cool breezes, and a lot of times you'll see the fog kind of come over the hill, and at night it gets very cold. In the day, it gets warm enough to get the wines right, but it doesn't get them overly ripe. So again, a perfect wine for a wine pairing, or sort of for a summer white pairing, you know, out on the patio kind of thing. And you know, you really get the descriptor that WENTE gives, which I think is absolutely right, is kind of a white nectarine, and you know, that is very refreshing. You know, got a lot of punchy acidity. This wine, I really like the way it finishes. It finishes with, you can get a little bit of the oak on the back palate, and then the acidity hits you on the salivary glands. So you get a kind of a punch in the salivary glands, which doesn't sound particularly nice, but it's great for wine. And so that gives you that refreshing characteristic. And you see, like here on the table, this style of wine, you've got the mushrooms that it would go well with. You have some olives that good combination. Again, I think because this wine has that punchy acidity, it definitely could handle some of the brie or the salami meats. You know, a lot of the fruit that's on the table too would work. So really kind of interesting, very, very nice wine. You know, they suggest brie with nuts and fruit. So there we go. We have it right here. I don't know where the nuts went. They're somewhere in there. Oh yeah, they're right in the middle. So brie with nuts and fruit. So. All right. So almost all the way through. We have a couple more left. My watch is telling me it's time to move on a little bit. Okay. So last two wines. So the next wine that we have is one of my favorite value plays that we sell in any of our stores, and it's the La Vieille Ferme Rosé. And so this rosé is actually a Vin de France, and so what that means is it's a wine that's made in France. So not very helpful, I suppose, for a descriptor. It's all of France, right? But it actually comes from the southern portion of France. And it's mainly made with Grenache, Cinsault, and a little bit of Syrah. So what makes it a really nice wine to me, and you know, is that Provence Rosé is like the ultimate summer wine. You know, it's almost made for the summer, right? In fact, almost all rosé originally in the United States was consumed in the summer, and it's like 20% of the wine consumed in France is rosé, and it's all consumed in the summer. So the French kind of know how to consume rosé during the summer, right? And so they make these lighter style, elegant rosés, and I think it's just amazing. The VIEILLE FERME is a good example of a wine that, even though it's not very expensive, it has that really nice, refreshing characteristic, and elegant aromatics on the nose. You know, that watermelon, they call it cherry sorbet. Not sure I've had a lot of cherry sorbet, but you know, I'll go with their descriptor. You know, on the palate, this wine is super slick, right? It's got that nice little brightness of fruit, watermelon, cherry, and then it just slides right off the palate. Very mouth-watering, and then again, the acidity from the Cinsault and a little bit of the Syrah, and then, you know, kind of gives it the punchiness, and then the Grenache gives it a little bit of weight. So it's not a heavy wine by any means. In fact, I don't know what the alcohol percentage is. It says 13. It almost appears as if it's lower than that, and it makes it super easy to drink. And again, you know, if you're in France, if you ever find yourself in France, or you want to kind of act like a French person, the charcuterie is a great combination, pâté, those type of things, because the fat in the charcuterie and the pâté, or even like something like nuts that have a little bit of weight to them, or brie with a little bit of that kind of weight to it, blends nicely with the lifted characteristic of this wine. So really just a beautiful wine for a very reasonable price. And honestly, when you blind taste this wine versus a bunch of other rosés that are twice as expensive, it oftentimes comes out on top. I don't know how they do it, but I definitely like it. All right, okay. So we tasted, you know, a bunch of wines that people are probably like, yeah, no-brainers. Those are summer wines. Now we're going to taste a wine that maybe you wouldn't think of as a summer wine, and it happens to be one of the wines that we have that's kind of semi-exclusive to Albertsons is KALYANA. It's actually made by the WENTE folks here, so similar to the other wines, sourced from the Central Coast in that cool climate region, in the area, like, you know, in that ARROYO, SECO, Santa Lucia Highlands, you know, general Monterey area. And it's, oh, I forgot to pour it, so I'm going to pour it first, otherwise I can't describe it. And one of the great features of this wine, along with the WENTE, and actually everything that's made here at Myria as well, is the sustainability factor. WENTE has taken a big push towards sustainability, and that's, you know, obviously important to us at Albertsons too. And I think in the end, it's really going to make the wine quality, you know, continue to get better. I mean, the wine's already really good. It's just going to elevate them as we think about what we're doing to our vineyard sites and what, you know, chemicals do or don't end up in the wine. And so it's been really great to see WENTE take a forefront position on reducing that. And then, you know, what ends up happening in the vineyard is you tend to get wines that are a little bit more interesting, or a lot more interesting. You get soil that's healthier, you get environments that are better, and you get these, you know, overall wines that are more interesting. A lot of winemakers talk about the acidity and the freshness coming from these vineyard sites that have this, you know, sustainability, organic, you know, this style of wine. So I think that's a great it's great that we were able to partner with them to make one of these wines. And you might ask, okay, so why? Okay, we're red wine. It's 100 degrees outside. It's 90% humidity. Well, Pinot Noir, you know, is a thin-skinned red grape varietal. So doesn't have a lot of tannins, so it doesn't have that bite, right? Generally it doesn't have that bite. People that drink really high-end Burgundy will argue with me over that, but let's just say most Pinot is not that way, right? So, and one of the things is that, you know, this wine is aged in oak, but it's not a lot of new oak, and it's made in that style that kind of retains its freshness and its forward fruit character. And typically, as a grape varietal, it's also lower alcohol, so that makes it easier to drink during the summer. And, you know, as I mentioned, its acidity is higher than, say, Cabernet or definitely the Merlot or Grenache or Syrah. So there's still this bright freshness to it. The classic combination with Pinot Noir is Roaring 40s Blue, which is a blue cheese. But you know, there's a lot of different things that will work here. These mushrooms are great combinations. You know, Pinot has this really interesting combination of you know, fruit and a touch of earthiness. This wine shows that really red cherry, you know, a little bit of dark cherry, a little bit of plum, but there is this hint of earthy kind of characteristic throughout the wine. You can smell it, just a touch of like mushrooms. And so then when you get these earthy kind of cheeses or you know, other charcuterie or other pieces here, you know, it blends really well with those style of you know, snacks that we have with it. So the other thing is that Pinot Noir is the most flexible grape varietal for pairing in my mind. I mean, I'm sure there's other grape varietals out there that would probably get mad at me for saying that. But and for me, it's like I can almost drink Pinot Noir with anything from, you know, a heavy steak to a light fair fish. I mean, it's great with salmon, it's great with chicken. And so it's a very flexible grape varietal. But because I said it's not super heavy, it's not super high in alcohol, it goes great during the summer with a lot of different wines. I mean, with a lot of different foods and a lot of different things that you might eat over the summer that might, you know, be a little bit on the lighter side. So again, a super flexible wine. And for me, you know, this is a beautiful little wine that we've, you know, that Wente's made semi-exclusively for us. And so, you know, I encourage you to go out and find some KALYANA. As it's, you know, it hits way above its price point. All right, so we got through all the wines. I don't know if there's any questions for me. We're still working through the new technology we discovered, and so
how would you compare any of these to someone's favorite wine, which is Provence Rosé?
So how would I compare any of these to Provence Rosé? So as I mentioned, so Provence Rosé is it's basically, Côte de Provence is a region in France. And like the La Vielle Ferme is not made from that same region, although I imagine they're probably sourcing a little bit of grapes there. And that's the most similar wine to Provence Rosé. And the reason that they don't call it Provence Rosé is because they could never charge, you know, whatever, under $12 for this wine. As soon as the word Provence goes on something, then the grape cost goes to the roof. And, you know, sometimes the wine quality does too. Sometimes you could argue maybe it doesn't. So this is the most common similar wine. And I think it's very comparable to a lot of the Provence Rosé out there.
And someone else commented about La Crema.
La Crema. Okay, so somebody was asking about La Crema. So La Crema would also, I'm guessing they're asking about the La Crema Chardonnay because we talked about the WENTE. La Crema would also be a good pairing. It's got some weightiness to it, but very similar to the WENTE. It's made on the Sonoma coast in cool climate, so it's not overtly high in buttery, oaky characteristics. So that would also work. So very similar if you like the WENTE than La Crema. The differences between Sonoma and Monterey is that I feel in Monterey sometimes the fruits are more tropical, and Sonoma the fruits tend to be more appley. So you get kind of the difference in those two. But yes, also a very good summer wine.
What temperature is a Pinot Noir best served?
Okay, good question. What temperature is a Pinot Noir best served? And so this wine actually threw in the refrigerator about a half an hour before we started this tasting. And what that does is it gets down into the like mid 50s, upper 50s. And then as you drink it, it warms up into the mid to low 60s. That's definitely a tool you can use on some of your red wines. I don't think it works particularly well for Cabernet because it mutes the flavors maybe, but if you're thinking about it's warm in the summer, you can take some of these red wines, these lighter style red wines, Pinot Noir or like a Beaujolais, or even some Grenache, and throw it in the refrigerator for a little bit just to put a slight chill on it.
And generally speaking, are red wines served at lower temperatures?
Generally speaking, our red wines served at lower temperatures. So white wines are typically served, you know, between 40 and 45 degrees Celsius. I mean, Celsius, that would be very warm. Fahrenheit. Sorry. For a while there, I had to practice in in Europe, so I remembered all the Celsius terms. So anyway, so Fahrenheit, so cool, 40 to 45, and then red wines often are times are served at room temperature. The difference is that room temperature was defined by Europe in the 50s, and their definition of room temperature is like 62 degrees, and our definition of room temperature is a lot different. So I would say that you really want to think of room temperature when you're thinking of that as cool, right? So upper 50s, low 60s. Cellar temperature is actually great to drink a lot of red wines at, especially Pinot Noir, if not just a touch cooler. And then I think that's all the questions that we have. There's some good questions though. We got some future budding masters of wine on the question. Asking questions over there, so that's great. So anyway, we're going to kind of wrap up. But again, thank you so much for joining us on this first Fresh Pass wine event. We look forward to having more of these as part of your membership. Take advantage of all the rest of the things that Fresh Pass can offer you. And we look forward to seeing you again at some point in the future.